I think I didn't do anything wrong, just sent a few harmless photos to a coworker to get my husband's attention. But instead of fighting for me, he handed me divorce papers. I guess some people can't take a joke. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning light filtered through our kitchen window as I watched Andrew hunched over his laptop again, coffee growing cold beside him. 7:30 a.m., and he was already lost in code, fingers dancing across keys like I wasn't even there. Our daughter Chloe sat across from him, methodically eating her cereal while stealing glances at her father's distracted face. "Andrew," I said, adjusting my blouse for the third time. "I'm leaving for work." He mumbled, not looking up. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, waiting. Nothing. Not even a glance at the outfit I'd carefully chosen, the blue top that used to make him stop mid-sentence and tell me I looked beautiful. "Daddy's working again," Chloe whispered to her stuffed elephant, pressing it close to her chest. Something twisted in my stomach. When had I become invisible in my own home? At the office, I settled into my desk in the marketing department, still thinking about Andrew's indifference. The open plan layout buzzed with Monday morning energy, but I felt hollow. 3 years of marriage, and my husband barely noticed when I left the room. "Morning, Evadne," Riley Carter's voice made me look up. He leaned against my cubicle wall, coffee in hand, that easy smile that made half the women in accounting do double takes. "You look fantastic today. That color really brings out your eyes." The compliment hit like warm sunlight after a cold night. "Thank you," I said, feeling my cheeks flush. "At least someone notices." "Rough morning at home?" Riley asked, his voice dropping to that concerned tone that made you want to tell him everything. "Just the usual. My husband's married to his computer these days." Riley's eyebrows raised sympathetically. "His loss. If I had someone like you waiting at home, I'd never look at a screen again." The flutter in my chest was immediate and intoxicating. When was the last time Andrew had said anything like that? When was the last time he'd really looked at me? Throughout the day, Riley found excuses to stop by my desk, comments about my presentation skills during our team meeting, a joke about how I made even Monday mornings bearable. Little things that added up to feeling seen, appreciated, valued. By lunch, an idea was forming. A terrible, brilliant idea. Andrew needed a wake-up call. He needed to remember that other men found me attractive, that he couldn't just take me for granted forever. A little harmless flirtation might remind him what he had. I spent my lunch break in the bathroom, touching up my makeup and taking a few photos. Nothing scandalous, just me looking good, maybe a little more cleavage than usual. A sultry smile. The kind of photos that would get a reaction. My thumb hovered over Riley's contact. This was just about getting Andrew's attention, I told myself. Just a reminder that his wife was desirable. I hit send. Riley's response came within minutes. "Wow, your husband is the luckiest man alive." The validation coursed through me like a drug. I screenshot the conversation, making sure to capture his response, then casually left my phone on the kitchen counter when I got home. Andrew was in the living room with Chloe, helping her with homework. For once, his laptop was closed. "How was your day?" he asked, glancing up as I entered. "Fine," I said, busying myself with dinner prep. "Just the usual office stuff." My phone buzzed on the counter. I saw Andrew's eyes flick toward it, then back to Chloe's math worksheet. It buzzed again. This time, Andrew looked directly at the phone, then at me. "Popular evening," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Probably just work stuff," I replied, not moving to check it. Let him wonder. Let him think about what he might be missing. At dinner, Chloe chatted about her day while Andrew remained unusually quiet. I caught him looking at me several times, really looking, like he was seeing me for the first time in months. Good, I thought. This is working. Later, as we got ready for bed, Andrew finally spoke up. Your phone was going off a lot during dinner. Was it? I didn't notice. I brushed my hair slowly, watching his reflection in the mirror. Probably just Faye texting about Mum's birthday party. Right, he said, but something in his voice had changed, an edge I hadn't heard before. When I reached for my phone to set the alarm, Andrew's hand caught my wrist gently. Everything okay? You seem different lately. For a moment, I almost told him everything, almost explained how invisible I'd been feeling, how much I needed his attention, his appreciation. But the words stuck in my throat. I'm fine, I said instead, just tired. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded and turned away. That night, I lay awake listening to his breathing, feeling more awake than I had in months. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd send another photo. Maybe something a little more daring, just to keep his attention. From across the hall, I heard Chloe talking to her stuffed animals. Daddy's sad again, she whispered, but maybe tomorrow he'll be happy. I closed my eyes, telling myself this was all for the best. Andrew needed to remember how to fight for me, how to value what he had. A little jealousy never hurt anyone. The next few days fell into a pattern. Riley's compliments at work, carefully staged photos sent during lunch breaks, Andrew's increasingly watchful eyes at home. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, electric with the thrill of being wanted. Friday evening, we hosted our monthly dinner party, something Andrew had suggested back when we were newlyweds to build community. Usually these gatherings felt like obligations, but tonight I had a different energy. I wore my red dress, the one that hugged in all the right places, and spent extra time on my makeup. Our guests arrived promptly at 7. Paul and Helen, Andrew's parents, my sister Faye, and her husband Marcus, and our neighbors, the Johnsons. The conversation flowed easily over wine and the lasagna I'd spent all afternoon perfecting. Evadne, you look absolutely radiant, Helen said as we cleared the main course. Doesn't she, Andrew? Andrew glanced up from stacking plates. She always looks beautiful. The automatic response stung more than silence would have. I forced a smile. Well, someone at work certainly thinks so. Riley, he's in sales. He's been very appreciative lately. Faye's eyebrows shot up. Riley? Just a coworker, I said, enjoying the sudden attention from around the table. But he has such a way with compliments. Yesterday he said I made even Monday mornings bearable. When was the last time you said something like that, honey? I directed the question to Andrew with a playful smile, but his face had gone carefully blank. The table fell quiet. I tell you you're beautiful every day, Andrew said quietly. Do you, though? Really? I laughed, taking a sip of wine. Or do you just say it because you're supposed to? There's a difference between going through the motions and actually seeing someone. Paul cleared his throat. Perhaps we should. No, it's fine, I continued, feeling reckless and powerful. I'm just saying it's nice to feel appreciated. Riley notices when I wear something new, when I change my hair. He actually looks up from his computer when I walk in the room. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Helen's mouth had formed a tight line. Faye was staring at her wine glass like it held the secrets of the universe. Evadne, Andrew's voice was very quiet. Can we not do this here? Do what? Talk about how nice it is to feel valued? I think that's a perfectly normal conversation for married couples. You're embarrassing yourself, Helen said sharply. And my son. I'm sorry you feel that way, I replied, my cheeks burning. I thought we were all adults here. I thought we could have an honest conversation about marriage. Andrew stood abruptly. I need some air. He stepped out onto the back patio, and I felt the table's disapproval like a physical weight. But underneath the embarrassment was something else, satisfaction. I'd gotten a reaction, finally. Evadne, Faye said carefully, maybe you should go talk to him. He'll be fine. He's just not used to me having opinions. The dinner party ended early. guests making polite excuses and quick exits. As I loaded the dishwasher, I could hear Andrew outside on the phone with someone, his voice too low to make out words. Later, as I got ready for bed, I posted a group photo from dinner on social media, carefully cropped to show me at my best, glowing and confident. Within minutes, Riley had commented, "Gorgeous as always. Your husband better be treating you right." I screenshot the comment before anyone else could see it, then deleted it, but not before Andrew walked past and glimpsed my phone screen. "Who was that?" he asked. "Who was what?" "The comment. I saw someone had commented on your post." "Oh, just Riley being silly. He's harmless." Andrew stood very still for a moment. "Harmless? Andrew, you're being paranoid. He's just a friend. Friends don't usually use kiss emojis." My heart skipped, but I kept my voice level. "You're imagining things. Maybe if you paid half as much attention to me as you do to everyone else's social media comments, we wouldn't have this problem." Andrew stared at me for a long moment, then quietly took out his phone. I heard the screenshot sound effect. "What are you doing?" "Nothing," he said, putting his phone away. "Just saving a memory." That night, Chloe appeared in our doorway in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant. "Mommy, why was everyone quiet at dinner?" I knelt down to her level. "Sometimes adults have complicated conversations, sweetheart. It's nothing for you to worry about." But Daddy looked sad, and Grandma Helen looked angry. "They're just being dramatic. Everything's fine." But as I tucked her back into bed, Chloe grabbed my hand. "Are you and Daddy fighting?" "No, baby. We're just figuring some things out." "I don't like it when you figure things out. It makes my stomach feel funny." I kissed her forehead, guilt pricking at my consciousness. "It'll be okay, I promise." Back in our bedroom, Andrew was already under the covers, turned away from my side of the bed. I slipped in beside him, hyper-aware of the space between us. "Andrew?" "I'm sorry about tonight. I didn't mean to make everyone uncomfortable." He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "Do you have feelings for him?" "For who?" "Riley." The question hung in the dark air between us. I could tell him the truth, that this was all about getting his attention, about feeling valued and seen. I could explain how invisible I'd been feeling, how desperate I was for him to notice me again. Instead, I said, "Don't be ridiculous. He's just a coworker." "Then why does it feel like you're trying to make me jealous?" "Because I am," I thought. "Because it's working. Because you're finally paying attention to me." "You're overthinking this," I said aloud. "Maybe you should focus less on imaginary threats and more on being present in your actual marriage." Andrew didn't respond, but I felt him pull further away from me in the bed. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating our bedroom wall before disappearing into the night. Monday morning brought an unexpected chill. Not just the October weather, but something in Andrew's demeanor as he moved through our morning routine with mechanical precision. Coffee, breakfast, kiss on Chloe's head, brief nod in my direction. "Have a good day," he said, but his eyes didn't meet mine. At work, I threw myself into flirting with Riley with renewed energy. If Andrew wanted to give me the cold shoulder, fine. I'd show him what he was missing. "You seem extra radiant today," Riley said, appearing at my cubicle with his usual coffee and smile. "Do I? Maybe it's the new perfume." I leaned slightly forward, letting him catch the scent. "Whatever it is, it's working. You're absolutely glowing." I sent him a photo during my lunch break, me in the bathroom mirror, lips slightly parted, eyes sultry. His response was immediate. "You're killing me here. How am I supposed to concentrate on quarterly reports when you look like that?" The validation felt like a drug, each compliment a hit that kept me coming back for more. But as the days passed, I noticed other things too. Whispers that stopped when I approached the coffee station. Glances exchanged between coworkers when Riley made his daily visits to my desk. Wednesday afternoon, I overheard two women from accounting talking by the printer. "I mean, she's married, right?" one was saying. "It just seems inappropriate." "Riley doesn't seem to mind," the other replied. "But yeah, it's getting pretty obvious." My cheeks burned, but I lifted my chin and walked past them with dignity. Let them talk. At least someone was paying attention to me. That evening, I met Faye for coffee at our usual spot downtown. She'd been unusually quiet since the dinner party, and I was hoping to smooth things over. "How are things with Andrew?" she asked carefully, stirring her latte. "Fine." "Why?" "He seemed upset Friday night." I waved dismissively. "He's just going through a phase. You know how men get when they feel threatened." "Threatened by what?" "By the fact that other people find me attractive, by the fact that I have a life outside of being his wife and Chloe's mother." Faye studied my face. "Evadne, what exactly is going on with this Riley person?" "Nothing. God, why does everyone assume something's going on? We're friends. We flirt a little. It's harmless." "Flirting isn't harmless when you're married." "Says who? Since when did appreciating compliments become a crime?" "Since you started throwing it in your husband's face at dinner parties." The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth I wasn't ready to examine. I was just trying to have an honest conversation about feeling valued in my marriage. By publicly humiliating Andrew. I didn't humiliate anyone. I stated facts. Faye sighed. "Evie, I love you, but you're playing with fire here. Andrew is a good man. Don't throw away your marriage for some office flirtation." "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm trying to save it." But even as I said the words, doubt crept in. Was I saving my marriage or destroying it? That night, Andrew was on his laptop again, but this time he quickly closed it when I entered the room. "Working late?" I asked. "Something like that." His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with an expression I couldn't read. "I need to run out for a bit." "Where?" "Just errands." He was gone for 2 hours. When he returned, he went straight to his office and closed the door. Friday brought a message from Riley that made my blood run cold. "Was your husband upset about our little game? Some guy from IT was asking questions about you today. Seemed pretty intense." My hands shook as I typed back, "What kind of questions?" "About our friendship, about whether we spend time together outside work. I told him we were just colleagues, but he seemed skeptical. Everything okay at home?" I didn't respond. Instead, I spent the rest of the day watching Andrew's face for signs of what he might know, what he might be planning. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Chloe looked between us with worried eyes. "Why is everyone so quiet lately?" "We're just tired, sweetie," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Daddy, are you mad at Mummy?" Andrew's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Why would you think that?" "Because you don't talk to each other anymore, and you sleep on the couch sometimes." I felt a stab of guilt. I hadn't realized Chloe had noticed Andrew's recent habit of falling asleep in his office chair. "Sometimes adults need space to think," Andrew said carefully. "It doesn't mean anyone's mad." After Chloe went to bed, I found Andrew in his office, surrounded by papers and printouts. "What are you working on?" I asked. He looked up, and for the first time in weeks, his gaze was direct and unflinching. "Just documenting some things." "What kind of things?" "Things that might be important later." A chill ran down my spine. "Andrew, what's going on?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I'd never seen before. Calm, analytical, almost clinical. "I think you know exactly what's going on, Evadne." The use of my full name instead of his usual Evie felt like a slap. I opened my mouth to deny everything, to explain, to make him understand. Instead, he held up his phone, showing me a screenshot of one of my photos to Riley. "We need to talk." The screenshot glowed on Andrew's phone screen, like evidence in a courtroom. My face, sultry and confident, the message timestamp clearly visible. My stomach dropped to my feet. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" Andrew's voice was eerily calm. The question is why you sent it. I scrambled for an explanation, any explanation that would make this look less damning. It's not what you think. What I think is that my wife has been sending provocative photos to another man. What I think is that she's been flirting with him publicly, embarrassing me in front of our friends and family, and lying to my face about it. He set the phone down carefully. Please tell me what it really is. The careful control in his voice was more terrifying than shouting would have been. This wasn't the Andrew I knew, distracted, gentle, easy to manage. This was someone else entirely. I was trying to get your attention, I said, the truth spilling out in a rush. You never look at me anymore. You're always working, always distracted. I felt invisible. So you decided to have an affair. It's not an affair, it's just flirting. Just photos and compliments. Nothing physical happened. Just photos and compliments. He repeated my words like they tasted bitter. Do you hear yourself? Andrew, please, I know how it looks, but it wasn't about him. It was about us. About making you remember that other men find me attractive, that you can't just take me for granted. Take you for granted. His laugh was hollow. I work 60 hours a week to provide for this family. I come home every night. I tell you you're beautiful every single day. But that's taking you for granted. You say it like a reflex, like you're checking it off a list. When was the last time you really looked at me? When was the last time you made me feel desired instead of just there? So this is my fault. I didn't say that. You absolutely did. You're saying that because I didn't make you feel sufficiently desired. You had no choice but to send half-naked photos to your coworker. The word half-naked made me flinch. They weren't half-naked. They were just flattering. Andrew stood and walked to his desk, returning with a folder. He opened it, revealing printed screenshots, not just the photos, but the entire text conversation with Riley. Gorgeous as always, he read. You're killing me here. Your husband is the luckiest man alive. Should I go on? My cheeks burned. Seeing the messages in print, removed from the intoxicating moment of receiving them, made them look tawdry and cheap. It was harmless flirtation. Harmless? Andrew's control finally cracked. Do you know that people at my work are talking about this? Do you know that our daughter asked me yesterday if we were getting divorced because kids at school were saying their parents saw mommy's pictures online? The blood drained from my face. What? Riley showed them to people, Evadne. Your harmless flirtation is now office gossip. Our 7-year-old is fielding questions about her parents' marriage on the playground. That's not my fault. I can't control what other people do with... You sent the photos. His raised voice echoed through the house, and we both froze, listening for sounds from Chloe's room. When silence continued, Andrew lowered his voice again, but the intensity remained. You sent intimate photos to another man. You flirted with him publicly. You humiliated me in front of our friends and family. And when I tried to talk to you about it, you lied. Repeatedly. I was scared. I knew you'd overreact. Overreact? My wife is having an emotional affair and I'm overreacting. It's not an affair. What would you call it? I opened my mouth, then closed it. What would I call it? The photos, the messages, the thrill of his attention, the way I'd started dressing for work with Riley in mind instead of Andrew. I would call it a mistake, I said finally. A stupid mistake that got out of hand. A mistake you made repeatedly, over weeks, while lying to my face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Andrew. I'll stop. I'll tell Riley it was inappropriate. You'll what? You'll promise to stop doing something you should never have started. You'll apologize for betraying your marriage vows and humiliating your family. Tears started flowing down my cheeks. Please don't do this. Please don't make this bigger than it is. I love you. I love our family. It was just a stupid way of trying to get your attention. By getting another man's attention instead. Yes. No. I don't know. I was sobbing now, mascara running, the carefully constructed facade of the past weeks crumbling. I felt so alone, Andrew, so invisible. You work all the time, and when you're home, you're thinking about work, and I felt like I was disappearing. For a moment, his expression softened. For a moment, I thought I saw the old Andrew, the one who would hold me when I cried, who would find a way to fix whatever was broken between us. Then his face hardened again. So talk to me, go to counseling, join a book club, take up painting, do literally anything except send provocative photos to another man. I know I should have. I'm sorry. Are you? Are you really sorry, or are you sorry you got caught? The question hit like a physical blow because I wasn't sure of the answer myself. From upstairs came the sound of a door opening, small feet on hardwood. Mommy? Daddy? Why are you yelling? Chloe appeared at the top of the stairs in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant, eyes wide and frightened. We're not yelling, sweetheart, Andrew said, his voice instantly gentle. Just having a grown-up conversation. It sounds like yelling, she said, starting down the stairs. I know, I'm sorry. Sometimes adults get loud when they're upset, but it's not your fault and you don't need to worry about it. Chloe reached the bottom of the stairs and looked between us, taking in my tear-stained face and Andrew's rigid posture. Are you getting divorced like Tommy's parents? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Andrew and I stared at each other over our daughter's head. We're just working through some problems, I said finally. That's what Tommy's parents said, Chloe replied with devastating 7-year-old logic. Andrew knelt down to her level. Hey, kiddo, whatever happens between Mommy and Daddy, we both love you very much. That will never change, okay? Okay, she whispered, but her lower lip was trembling. How about you go back to bed, and I'll come read you another story. Chloe nodded and trudged back upstairs. Andrew followed her, leaving me alone in the living room with the scattered evidence of my betrayal. When he came back down 20 minutes later, he was carrying a suitcase. Where are you going? My parents' house. I need some space to think. Andrew, please, don't leave. We can work this out. He paused at the door. Can we? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you made a series of deliberate choices to betray our marriage. And when confronted with evidence, your first instinct was to lie and blame me. I panicked. I was scared. You were scared of getting caught. There's a difference. What do you want me to do? Tell me what to do to fix this. Andrew looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something die in his eyes. I don't think you can fix this, Evadne. I don't think you even understand what you broke. The door closed behind him with a quiet click, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my marriage and the terrible understanding that my game had gone too far. The next morning brought in silence that felt different from Andrew's usual quiet moods. This was the silence of absence, his coffee cup missing from the sink, his side of the bed unslept in, the house holding its breath. Chloe appeared in the kitchen in her school clothes, looking around with confused eyes. Where's Daddy? He stayed at Grandma and Grandpa's house last night, I said, forcing normalcy into my voice while pouring her cereal. Why? Sometimes grown-ups need space to think about things. Is he coming back? The question I'd been avoiding all night. I don't know, sweetheart. She ate her breakfast in silence, occasionally glancing at the door like Andrew might walk through it at any moment. At work, I could barely concentrate. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Andrew. Instead, it was Riley, oblivious to the destruction his harmless flirtation had caused. You seem distracted today. Everything okay? Fine, I said, not looking up from my computer screen. Want to grab lunch? You look like you could use some cheering up. I can't. I'm busy. For the first time since this started, Riley looked uncertain. Did I do something wrong? Yes, I wanted to scream. You showed my photos to people. You made this public. You turned my marriage into office gossip. Instead, I said, I just need some space right now. The afternoon crawled by. I called Andrew twice, but both calls went to voicemail. I texted him, please call me. We need to talk about Chloe. No response. That evening, I drove to Paul and Helen's house. Andrew's car was in the driveway, and I felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. Helen answered the door, her usually warm expression cold and distant. Evadne. Is Andrew here? I need to talk to him. He doesn't want to see you right now. Helen, please. This is between me and my husband. Your husband is my son, and you've hurt him badly. I think you've done enough. The door started to close, but Andrew appeared behind his mother. It's okay, Mom. I'll talk to her. We sat on the front porch swing, where Andrew and I had shared our first kiss 8 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Chloe's asking questions, I said. I know. I'll pick her up from school tomorrow and explain things. Explain what exactly? That Daddy's going to be staying somewhere else for a while. The casual way he said it made my chest tight. For how long? I don't know yet. Andrew, please, come home. We can work through this. Can we? He turned to face me fully. Because I've been thinking about it all night, and I keep coming back to the same question. If you were willing to do this now, what happens the next time you feel neglected? The next time some guy gives you attention I'm apparently not providing? There won't be a next time. How do I know that? How do I trust someone who looked me in the eye for weeks and lied? I had no answer for that. I talked to a lawyer today, he said quietly. The words hit like a physical blow. What? I needed to understand my options, understand what this means for Chloe, for the house, for everything. You talked to a lawyer about divorce? I talked to a lawyer about protecting my daughter and myself. From me, I'm not some kind of threat. I made a mistake, Andrew. A stupid, terrible mistake. But it's not the end of the world. Isn't it? His voice was so quiet I had to strain to hear it. Because it feels like the end of my world. It feels like the woman I married, the woman I trusted with everything, never existed. I'm still me. I'm still the woman you married. The woman I married wouldn't have done this. The woman you married felt valued, felt seen, felt like she mattered to her husband. Andrew stood abruptly. And there it is again. Somehow this is still my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying there were problems in our marriage that we both contributed to. Problems that justified betraying our vows. Problems that made me vulnerable to making bad choices. Bad choices. He laughed bitterly. You're still not taking responsibility. You're still making excuses. I am taking responsibility. I admitted I was wrong. I apologized. I said I'd stop. What more do you want? I want my wife back. But she's gone, isn't she? She was replaced by someone who lies and manipulates and blames everyone else for her choices. The accusation stung, because part of me recognized the truth in it. When had I become this person? When had I started justifying the unjustifiable? I can change, I said desperately. I can be better. I don't think you can, and I don't think I can forget what you did. Every time I look at you, I see those photos. I hear you laughing about it at our dinner table. I remember how you looked me in the eye and lied. So that's it. 8 years of marriage and you're just giving up. You gave up first, Evadne. The moment you sent that first photo, you gave up on us. He stood and walked toward the door, then paused. I'll pick up Chloe tomorrow after school. She can stay with me this weekend. You can't just take her. I'm not taking her. I'm spending time with my daughter while her parents figure out their marriage. And if I say no? Andrew's expression hardened. Then we'll let the lawyers figure it out. The next week passed in a blur of sleepless nights and awkward conversations with Chloe. Andrew picked her up from school twice, taking her for dinner and bringing her home with stories about helping Grandpa in his workshop and baking cookies with Grandma. Why can't Daddy just come home? She asked one night as I tucked her in. It's complicated, sweetheart. Everything's complicated now, she said with heartbreaking wisdom. Friday afternoon, I came home to find a manila envelope on my doorstep. My name was written across the front in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside were legal documents, divorce papers, custody motions, and a letter from Andrew's attorney outlining temporary arrangements. The papers requested primary custody for Andrew, citing infidelity and emotional instability as grounds. My hands shook as I read through the legalese, the cold language reducing our marriage to a series of assets to be divided and failures to be documented. At the bottom of the stack was a note in Andrew's handwriting. "I'm sorry it came to this. The house is yours until we can work out a permanent arrangement. I'll continue paying the mortgage and utilities. All I ask is that you don't bring him around Chloe." Him. Riley. As if Riley mattered at all, as if any of this had really been about Riley. I called Faye, sobbing into the phone. "He filed for divorce. He wants custody. He thinks I'm an unfit mother." "Oh, Evie." Her voice was sad but not surprised. "What did you expect?" "I expected him to fight for our marriage. I expected him to be angry and jealous and try to win me back, not just give up." "You wanted him to fight for you, after you were flirting with another man?" "It wasn't about the other man. It was about getting Andrew's attention." "Well, you got it, just not the way you wanted." "What am I supposed to do now?" There was a long pause. "Maybe you should think about what you really want, Evie, and whether you're willing to do the work to get it. I want my family back. Then you need to prove that, not with words, but with actions. And you need to stop making this about what Andrew did wrong and start focusing on what you can do right." That night, I sat in our empty house, surrounded by the life we'd built together, photos from our honeymoon, Chloe's artwork on the refrigerator, the couch where we used to watch movies together. For the first time since this all started, I forced myself to really look at what I'd done. Not the excuses or justifications, but the raw truth of it. I had betrayed my husband's trust. I had prioritized the attention of another man over the feelings of my family. I had lied, repeatedly and deliberately, even when given chances to tell the truth. And now, I was going to lose everything. The courthouse was nothing like I'd imagined. No dramatic wooden benches or towering columns, just fluorescent lights, industrial carpeting, and the smell of burnt coffee from a vending machine. I sat in the hallway outside family court, smoothing my conservative navy dress and trying to calm my racing heart. Andrew arrived with his lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she ate divorce cases for breakfast. He wore his best suit, the one I'd helped him pick out for job interviews years ago. We made eye contact briefly across the hallway, and I saw nothing familiar in his expression. No anger, no sadness, just a careful blankness that was somehow worse than hatred would have been. My own lawyer, a kind but overworked public defender, shuffled through papers beside me. "Remember," she said quietly, "focus on your relationship with Chloe. Don't get defensive about the marriage issues. The judge isn't here to fix your relationship. She's here to determine what's best for your daughter." The hearing was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 9:45, Helen and Paul arrived, followed by my mother and Faye. The hallway suddenly felt crowded with the wreckage of our extended family, everyone picking sides in a war I'd started without meaning to. "All rise for the Honourable Judge Patricia Winters." Judge Winters was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with greying hair pulled back severely and eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed our case file while we stood in uncomfortable silence. "Please be seated. This is a hearing for temporary custody arrangements in the matter of Mercer versus Mercer. I've reviewed the initial filings and evidence submitted by both parties." Evidence. The word made my stomach clench. I knew what evidence Andrew had. Screenshots of my messages with Riley, witness statements from the dinner party, documentation of my lies and evasions. Andrew's lawyer spoke first, painting a picture of a faithful husband and devoted father whose wife had engaged in an inappropriate extramarital relationship that had become public knowledge, causing emotional distress to the minor child. She presented printouts of my photos and text conversations with Riley, reading selected messages aloud in a clinical voice that made them sound even more damaging than I remembered. "You're absolutely glowing," she read. "Your husband better be treating you right." These communications demonstrate a pattern of inappropriate intimate contact outside the marriage, conducted while Mrs. Mercer was deliberately deceiving her husband about the nature of the relationship. My lawyer did her best to minimize the damage, arguing that I was a loving mother who had made errors in judgment but posed no threat to Chloe's well-being. She emphasized my role as primary caregiver and the importance of maintaining stability in Chloe's living situation. But even as she spoke, I could see the judge's expression, professional neutrality mixed with barely concealed disapproval. "Mrs. Mercer," Judge Winters said, addressing me directly, "I'd like to hear from you about these communications with Mr. Carter." I stood on shaking legs. "Your Honor, I want to be completely honest about what happened. I made terrible choices that hurt my family. I was feeling neglected in my marriage, and instead of addressing those issues appropriately, I sought attention elsewhere. I know that was wrong. I know I betrayed my husband's trust and embarrassed my family." "Are you still in contact with Mr. Carter?" "No, Your Honor. I ended all personal communication with him the night my husband confronted me about it." "And how do you believe your actions have affected your daughter?" The question I'd been dreading. "I know Chloe has been confused and upset by the tension in our home. I never intended for any of this to affect her. She's the most important thing in my life. Yet you engaged in behavior that you knew would be hurtful to her father and disruptive to your family stability." "Yes, Your Honor. I was selfish and short-sighted. I was thinking about my own feelings instead of considering the consequences for my family. It was the most honest I'd been about any of this, and saying it aloud felt like stepping off a cliff." Judge Winters made notes, then called Andrew to speak. "Mr. Mercer, what are your concerns regarding your wife's fitness as a primary custodial parent?" Andrew stood, his voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, my concern isn't that Evadne doesn't love Chloe. She does. My concern is her judgment and her willingness to prioritize her own desires over our family's well-being. The pattern of deception she engaged in, the public nature of her actions, and her initial refusal to take full responsibility suggests someone who makes impulsive decisions without considering the impact on others. Have you observed any direct impact on your daughter?" "Yes. Chloe has become withdrawn and anxious. She's asking questions about divorce that no 7-year-old should have to ask. She's heard comments from other children at school about her mother's behavior. She's been exposed to adult conflicts that have clearly distressed her." "What custody arrangement are you seeking?" "Primary physical custody, with liberal visitation for Evadne. I want Chloe to maintain a relationship with her mother, but I believe she needs the stability and consistency that I can provide." The judge asked a few more questions, then called a brief recess to review the evidence and testimony. I sat in the hallway, feeling like I was waiting for a jury to decide my fate. In a way, I was. Helen approached me during the break, her expression softer than it had been in weeks. "Evadne," she said quietly, "I want you to know that we don't hate you. We're disappointed and hurt, but we don't hate you." "I'm so sorry, Helen. I'm sorry I hurt Andrew. I'm sorry I hurt all of you." "I believe you are. But sorry doesn't undo the damage, does it?" When court reconvened, Judge Winters delivered her decision with the same clinical precision she'd shown throughout the hearing. "After reviewing the evidence and testimony, I find that both parents love their child and are capable of providing appropriate care. However, I am concerned about the recent instability in the home environment and Mrs. Mercer's demonstrated pattern of deceptive behavior. Therefore, I am granting temporary primary physical custody to Mr. Mercer, with Mrs. Mercer to have parenting time every other weekend and one evening per week. Both parents will share legal custody and decision-making authority regarding the child's welfare. I am also ordering both parties to attend co-parenting counseling to help them navigate this transition in a way that minimizes trauma to their daughter. As for the marital residence, given that Mr. Mercer is seeking primary custody and will need appropriate housing for the child, And given Mrs. Mercer's role in precipitating the current crisis, I am awarding temporary exclusive use of the family home to Mr. Mercer. The words hit like physical blows. I was losing my daughter, losing my home, losing everything I'd taken for granted just months ago. Mrs. Mercer, you will have until the end of this week to remove your personal belongings from the residence. Mr. Mercer, you will provide reasonable access for this purpose. The gavel came down with a sound like a door slamming shut. In the hallway afterward, I watched Andrew accept congratulations from his parents and lawyer. Across the space between us, our eyes met one final time. I wanted to say something, to apologize again, to beg him to reconsider, to somehow bridge the chasm I'd created between us. But what was there to say? I had gambled with our marriage, and I had lost. Faye drove me home, to the house that was no longer my home, in heavy silence. "What am I going to do?" I asked as we pulled into the driveway. "You're going to figure out how to be the best mother you can be to Chloe," she said. "You're going to get some help, maybe some therapy, and you're going to learn from this. I've lost everything." "You've lost a lot, but you haven't lost everything. You still have your daughter's love, even if you don't have custody. You still have a chance to rebuild your life into something better." "What if Andrew never forgives me?" "Then you'll have to live with that, but maybe forgiveness isn't the point anymore. Maybe the point is becoming someone who deserves forgiveness, whether you get it or not." That evening, I sat in our empty living room. Andrew had already moved his and Chloe's essential belongings back in, and tried to process what my life had become. Tomorrow, I would start looking for an apartment. Next week, I would see my daughter for a few hours on Wednesday evening, and then not again until the following weekend. The photos that had started all of this were still on my phone. I scrolled through them now, trying to remember what I'd felt when I took them, what I'd thought I was accomplishing. I saw a woman desperate for attention, willing to risk everything for the fleeting high of feeling desired. I saw someone so focused on her own needs that she'd forgotten to consider the people who loved her. I deleted the photos, one by one, until they were gone. It was too late to save my marriage, too late to undo the hurt I'd caused, but maybe it wasn't too late to become someone better, someone worthy of the second chances I might never get. Outside, Andrew's car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I watched him lift a sleeping Chloe from her car seat, her arms wrapped around his neck, trusting him completely to keep her safe. I had broken that trust, shattered the security of her world for the sake of my own ego. But Andrew, steady, reliable Andrew, would put the pieces back together. He would give her the stability I had thrown away. As I watched my husband carry our daughter into the house that was no longer mine, I finally understood the true cost of my choices. I had wanted to feel valued, desired, important. Instead, I had lost everything that actually mattered. The next morning, I packed my belongings into boxes, each item a reminder of the life I'd destroyed. By afternoon, I was loading the last box into my car, preparing to drive to the small apartment I'd rented across town. Andrew stood in the doorway, watching me with that same careful blankness he'd worn in court. "I'll have Chloe ready for you Wednesday at 6, he said. "Thank you." "Evadne." He paused, and for a moment I thought he might say something that would give me hope, some indication that forgiveness might be possible. Instead, he said, "Don't make this harder on her than it has to be." I nodded, not trusting my voice. As I drove away from the house where I'd been a wife and a full-time mother, I caught sight of myself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, older, sadder, marked by consequences I'd never imagined when I sent that first photo. I had wanted Andrew to fight for me, to prove his love through jealousy and grand gestures. Instead, he had fought for our daughter, proving his love through protection and stability. I had gotten exactly what I deserved.